Welcome back to Save Your Thyroid with Jennifer Holcomb, where we dive deep into the latest advancements in thyroid care. Millions struggle with thyroid disease, facing confusion, frustration, and high costs. But thanks to scientific advancements, we can now uncover deeper connections in our health, starting with DNA testing. Today, we're joined by epigenetic expert Susan Robbins, a precision health coach and award-winning leader in genetic optimization. With a no-nonsense approach, Susan blends cutting-edge science with real-life experience to help you unlock your full potential. She's battled autoimmune issues, Lyme disease, and the stress of law enforcement, making her insights both powerful and personal. In today's episode, we explore how DNA testing can illuminate the mysteries of both general and thyroid health and empower you to take control of your well-being. We'll cover some key genetic insights that I've gained on my own epigenetic journey and how they relate to stress and metabolism, weight and appetite, detox and chemical sensitivities, and be sure to stick around until the end when we discuss two important genetic SNPs that play a direct role in thyroid hormone function. Personalized health starts with understanding your DNA. Susan, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me back, my friend.
Well, in the last episode with Susan, we discussed lifestyle and why it is so important to the expression of our genes. And if you haven't watched that episode, I recommend you go check it out because it sets the stage for this episode. At that time, we were awaiting the results of my DNA test, and today we're going to discuss those results and the insights that I've gained from them. I really was just blown away at how much information was included in the DNA report and how applicable it is to what we talked about in the last episode, which is our lifestyle choices and how they influence our genetic expression. So we're going to not go through every single genetic SNP because there's too many to cover in one episode, but we're going to cover some of the most important ones today that were on my report and some ones that may be really applicable to our listeners today.
I always like to start with just a little bit of DNA 101 here so people get it. Most people think that our genes control us, and it's actually the opposite, and that's epigenetics. Epigenetics is how our lifestyle and our environment affect how our genes actually express. DNA itself is pure probabilities and propensities. So it's not exact. And the epigenetics, when you bring in the lifestyle, people, all those choices we make, one way or the other, are affecting DNA, how it expresses.
Totally.
Some things we're not going to change, our eye color, skin color, things like that. But the majority of things, up to 95%, we actually have control over. So I think that's a really important piece to bring in because we're going to talk about some different SNPs here. But the main thing is, how are these SNPs expressing? And that's the beauty of epigenetic coaching, like we're doing, is getting those genes to express as we want to. Because I can tell you, we all have some crappy ones. Some of us were dealt a hand of more crappy ones than others. I just did one yesterday. I was like, geez, this is like easy to go through. And then I have others I'm going, holy crap. And that's a gene that I haven't really worked out as much with. And I'm doing extra research on it. And we're always putting in different new things. And so really it's about the expression. How do we lifestyle, environment, how do we tailor our environment to it, supplements, like all the things to get these genes to express as we want. So I think that's just a super important thing to cover before diving into this. And also the DNA testing that I do with my company, Healthy Awakening Testing, it's lifestyle based. So not all DNA is created equally. Now, I just did a podcast last week on this, so you guys can tune in. So I won't take it up all the time on Jen's podcast explaining all this, but just the very short of it. If you've done 23andMe or Ancestry, those are ancestry based. That's what they're looking at. I don't do any of that in mine. Mine is lifestyle based. And we go through and so my testing is going to have the most important, impactful SNPs to be able to work with. And if you don't know how to implement it, understand the expression, have someone go over that with you. Like in a session with me, we went over, it took us like about 90 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how many panels, to find out what's expressing. If you don't know how to work with it, it's just information sitting there. And it can also just be generic information of this gene is this, do this. Well, why do we want to like throw more supplements down someone's throat if that's not even happening,
Right.
not even close? Lifestyle has dialed that in. So anyway, that's just my little basis so that people understand what we're doing here when we're talking about this and we talk about expression. Is it happening as your gene is coding or is it not? So just because you may have a propensity for something doesn't mean it's going to happen. So that's where you get the panic people. Oh my God, I get Alzheimer's. Conversely, the same. Just because you don't have a propensity or it's neutral, it could go either way, doesn't mean you can't dial that up through something in lifestyle that you may be doing that's not the best to affect that. Does that all make sense?
Totally. And I think it's really important to mention that. Thank you for bringing that up because it's going to impact the choices we make. And we'll get into all of that
Absolutely.
with these steps.
Yep. Because what the choices for one person are going to be different than the choices for another person because we're also very unique and that's personalized health. I'm very unique in this country with what I do. There's another genetic platform I use. It's not DNA. The DNA is your blueprint. This is what you're given from mom and dad from day one. The other platform I have is called PH360, and that's how your DNA is expressing, and that's your user manual. So when you hear me referring to Jen as a diplomat, and me as an activator, that's where that's coming from. It's based on how you're formed in the womb and the predominant hormones that drive you. And that's where we get the exacts on the timing of foods, workouts, when to be creative, when to be detail oriented, the exact foods that you should be eating because of how everything is currently expressing. So I do blueprint, user manual. That's where we're coming from when we will be referring to some of this because just because again the DNA says one thing, it might not be that spot on because of where you currently are and how things are expressing. So that's why I think the importance of having the coach being able to do this, understanding you, this is where we put everything into use together and knowing what kind of trumps the other. Go to my podcast and listen to it. I don't want to take up the time here. You'll understand what the limitations are with DNA. Can't give you the exact foods, can't give you the exact timing where the other profile can. It's really, what are you looking to accomplish? DNA, I think, is so very valuable to understand these propensities, especially when it comes to how do we process certain foods. How does our mind work with different neurotransmitters, stress neurotransmitters, because they just drive us so much. Weight, hormones for you, like thyroid conversion, hormone propensities. Do we get rid of toxic estrogen metabolites that can build up and increase risk for breast cancer? How do we do with that? And then follow it up with labs. So yeah, if we start the COMTGG. So again, because people are gonna be like, what the hell is the COMTGG? So we have the actual gene, that's the COMT. Okay. And then you're going to hear two letters after that. Those are alleles. One's from mom, one's from dad. It's creating your genotype. And you can have those alleles can be normal or they can be a variant. They are not mutations. That word is thrown around incorrectly. There's only like 2% of actual genetic mutations. These are variants off of the norm that were created for survival. And you can have a combination of two normals, two variants, or one of both. And sometimes two normals, as you're going to find out with Gen CO and GG, some can be very impactful, some not. And same with the variant. And even having just one variant can play a part. So you'll hear that that's that specific genotype, that SNP that we're talking about. So the CONTGG, this is a breakdown of catecholamines. Catecholamines are neurotransmitters, dopamine, norepinephrine. Okay. And the CONT gene is responsible for breaking them down for processing. And you have the GG is two normals. And you think, sweet, that's normal. Well, that's actually the warrior gene, the CONTGG, is a very rapid breakdown. Now, some issues that can happen there are because it's a very rapid breakdown, you can have a lot of the times lower levels of these neurotransmitters. So lower dopamine, lower norepinephrine, they're more excitatory. So it can make people a little more chill. On the other hand, you'll have people that are in AA. I am an AA, and that is the warrior. We don't tend to handle stress as well. It's a very slow breakdown. And then you have the AG, which is one of each, and that one is a normal breakdown. So the GG, as we discussed with Jen, is going to have that better response to stress. And the interesting thing with the GG You actually need stress in your life. Too little stress is going to lead to less optimal cognitive function. So you want to make sure, and we have a stress threshold, and we want to actually be harnessing stress because it keeps us motivated, it keeps us going and excited, right? And we typically want to be operating just below that threshold. The problem is most people nowadays, "Oh, I'm so busy, I don't have time, I don't sleep, I don't need sleep." Wrong. They're up here and they don't recognize it because that's the norm. But this is where you
Right.
start to see all the physical issues, which even though you are the warrior, you were up here and it can be even too much for the warrior. And that's where you started to experience different things. Um, and you were experiencing feelings of that dopamine kind of crashing.
Totally. Yeah. I'll just add in here, back in November after we recorded the podcast, our last interview, I had a death in the family and it was really, really stressful for me personally. And so from November till about February, I was in a really tough place mentally because of that. And it had a huge effect on my physical symptoms as well. But yeah, low dopamine symptoms all day long, low motivation, flat mood, just mentally
Flatlined.
foggy. And I didn't record any new podcasts during that time. I didn't have any creativity because of that added stress from the death. I was really feeling that. And that's why it's good to know this, because then I can implement those strategies to help balance that out.
Yeah. So protein,
Mhm.
making sure that you have adequate protein. Protein increases catecholamines. I, on the other hand, have to watch. And I'm an activator. More, we're more the meat people, where Jen, being the diplomat, doesn't tend to need quite as much protein. She's not in the gym training to be a beast. She doesn't need as much of that protein. It doesn't work as well with her body, where my body does. But if I have a high protein meal at night, this brain doesn't shut off. There's supplements that you can also use to help the L-DOPA when you know this is absolutely an issue. And we know that when the dopamine is tanked, and it's especially with stress, right? And what does stress make us crave? Sugar, because dopamine's pleasure,
Right.
motivation. And so we look for these comfort foods. So you really, as much as you want to dive into these comfort foods, so important to try to avoid that sugar because it creates that stress cycle of needing more and more and more. So we look at things like that. But velvet bean extract, or it's called mucuna, just a very small amount, we can work with that. It's not something you want to be on all the time, but in times like that, that can also be super helpful. And we know that BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor, that's another high impact gene around the brain, clarity, spatial awareness, memory. And that gets depleted with stress
Right.
and sugar. So again, like these things that this is where lifestyle comes in. It's not all about I'm going to take a magic pill. So really working with the foods, getting adequate sleep, the right stress relief for you. Because again, the health type's all different. I need movement. You need to be outside. You need the outdoors, sunshine, and you need some quiet time. And you also connection for you with your loved ones. Super, super important in helping to relieve that stress. And I remember that's kind of where you headed. At one point, you emailed me and you said, "I just need to spend time. I need to spend my time with my people, my family." And that was just so you to start bringing this back up
That was really
and
kind of
recognize that.
the catalyst for bringing me out of it. Was in January, we did have a family reunion and I was able to visit with all of my people and kind of celebrate my family member's life. Back to the dopamine issue, we were talking before we started recording. I actually have 3 different SNPs that contribute to low dopamine. And
Yeah.
so those are things you wouldn't know without checking this DNA. And so that's
Yeah.
why this is so incredibly helpful to know how to work with your genetics.
But you have the really rapid breakdown.
Mhm.
So there you're going to have lower levels typically anyway. And then MC4R, that one is around more dopamine production, serotonin pathway, regulates food intake, and you're likely lower there with one of the variants. So that can be impactful. And then you combine that with the ANKK1, which is around the dopamine receptors. If they're not able to react and you have a variant there, and that's like less avoidance. The willpower, not as good. So you're going to have more of those cravings. And I know when I would check in, how are you doing? You're like, yeah, I'm not eating as well as I should.
Yep.
Right. This is just where we go. But when you're understanding your why, again, this is why we do this before I sit down to do DNA with somebody. So just so you guys know, when you get a kit, when the results come back, they take they're taking about 3 weeks right now. When the results come back, we actually meet for about 90 minutes to go over all of it. And in the very beginning, I say DNA is not meant to diagnose, treat, or cure any illness or disease. It's here to help you make the best decisions for your wellness, quality of life moving forward. Well, what can we work with? So if I shoot back to that BDNF, because again, that's stress is a big driver there in that expression, and yours was good. Like you should likely have good levels. But again, you're like brain fog, all this, and I'm going, maybe she's got lower levels. Holy basil, great supplement. I'm under a tremendous amount of stress right now. I've been taking holy basil for the last couple of months. I love it. But I also drink Tulsi tea. Tulsi is holy basil, Tulsi. And I love Organic India brand. They have wonderful flavors there. And that's a really nice one to sip on, but with your water through the day. It's energizing, but calming as well to help with stress. So that's something you can do that's really helpful for BDNF. You'll also, if you were to go online and look up, because I've recommended it before, another supplement that's great for increasing BDNF is called Bacopa, Bacopa. So the majority of your people on here are thyroid. If you are on thyroid meds, don't do the Bacopa. It can actually, I think it's increase the thyroid numbers or thyroid activities.
Excellent tip there. Thank you for pointing that out. Well, going back to the whole idea that this DNA report kind of influences our choices, let's talk about the SNP that I have that is a high impact obesity gene.
FTO. And you have both of the variants there. It's an AA. And that A, even if you are an AT, T is the normal, even if you're an AT, you still have an increased risk around obesity there. But the AA is so impactful. And with Jen having both there, she was set up since the age of 7 for this to express with obesity. And then she's been open on here and has said, I've had the issues with trying to lose weight, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And we've also talked about you having very little motivation to exercise, right? Because of lack of results. And again, we found when we did the pH 360 with you, it's timing. Also, timing is a big part. Diplomat in the morning, you're gonna be really frustrated because it's kind of like the reverse for you. It's not good. You can put on weight, you can be tanked in the afternoon, just not ideal. And that can be really demotivated. Like you needed any less motivation with the dopamine, right? When we increase these things and see results and get these hits of dopamine. The FTO is AA. Here you're set up. Well, exercise, and you said this is pretty motivating for you, 80% positive impact on this SNP. 80%.
That's motivation to exercise right there.
Right there.
Yeah.
I've seen many people that have I've had several with the AA, but a lot of ATs in there. And I'm an AT as well. And I think I've just been very fortunate to be an activator and be all my life pretty active. But I was a fat kid. I was 170 pounds. I'm only 5'1".
Wow.
And I was a tank. I was a tank until I dropped, and until I found all this. That helped me to get to the smallest, fittest I've ever been in my life, and I'm 59. So it's never too late to make these changes, right? You're in your 40s. I mean, it's never too late to find out. I'm working with a woman. We actually start on Monday. She's 82. I have 2 others that are 70. People want quality of life. The sooner you dial in, the better. But totally. This is where this kind of stuff comes in. So if you think about, had we known this when we were younger,
my goodness, would have been a game changer. I wish I could go back in time and just take care of that. So,
and the other thing with that A allele in there is protein. Again, comes up as an important part. Your TTs, they're the very low risk. They actually do better with a very, very much higher, a higher carbohydrate intake, which shocks a lot of them. Again, it's just so different in how we are. And again, this I think correlates very much with your pH 360 with the foods. Now you have certain body types because of the way you're formed in the womb with those predominant hormones, that's where like it really can affect the expression of these genes and why it helps to work with, work with both. Because we know you're not one for a very high protein diet.
And related to that is this other snip that is on my profile that talks about a need for complex carbs to lose abdominal
PLIN1.
fat.
Yep. That's another higher impact. It's PLIN1.
Mhm.
And you have the one variant in there, and that is specific to abdominal fat loss. And that TC is what your genotype is. And that's about, 150 grams or more of complex carbohydrates for abdominal fat loss. And I have people go like, what? I've been doing like 10 grams of carbs. And I'm going, well, look where you are. Now, clarify. This doesn't mean load up on pasta and the bread and the crap. This is predominantly veggies and your low glycemic fruits, right?
Mm.
You want to make sure low glycemic is the glycemic load that's going to, we don't want the big blood sugar spike. So things like berries, some citrus, they're going to tend to be lower glycemic. Lots of veggies. And that is so, again, in line. Like I even typed on your, anything was like, follow your pH 360. It's spot on. So many people are so carb panicked.
Averse. Yeah.
I can't eat, like literal panic. I can't eat a carbohydrate. I'm
I was
diabetic.
carnivore for 9 months. And previously, years ago, I did a very, very low carb diet program that I lost several pounds on, but it was all over my body and I still didn't lose that abdominal fat. But isn't that
Wow.
crazy? Isn't that crazy? I lost about
Wow.
75 pounds and I still had a tummy. So yeah, so impactful.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
let's move on. There's another group of SNPs that I have there's several of them that have to do with detoxification.
Detox.
And, and it's not just the chemicals, it's not just the environmental toxins, it's also hormones. So talk a little bit in that area about the important strategies that I need to implement for that.
The biggest things around the detox.
Mhm.
So my base panels, we did 4 with Jen. I have so many different ones that, people can choose from, but my base 3, they play so well together. Nutrition, and that's going to look at like, how do I break down different fats? How do I work with carbohydrates? How do I process them? Protein. This is where we find the obesity gene. We look at lactose intolerance. We look at gluten sensitivity, glutamate sensitivity, which people don't think much about. And if you think about MSG, if you're eating natural flavors and you've got headaches and anxiety, it could be that you might not you might not convert excitatory glutamate, which is another neurotransmitter, to relaxin GABA. And maybe you do genetically, but those genes are turned off or can be drastically turned down by childhood trauma. There's epigenetics coming in. So like we address all these different things in the food panel. Then you have the micronutrient panel, which is looking at propensities around your vitamins and minerals. So we look at the B vitamins, and that's why I'm bringing this up, because you'll see the B vitamins and choline will also come into the detox panel. Under the B vitamins, that's the first place you're going to see your MTHFR genes. In that 1298C, it's about 30% decreased dopamine production.
Mm.
Right? Like, again, like things we just don't think about, don't talk about when we hear methylation, all of that, or the MTHFR genes solely about methylation. They both have their own little issues too. So you came up that GGTG is about 83% activity. Well, that's actually ideal. You might say, oh, that's not high enough. Well, you can actually be over methylated or too much. And that'll create an even more need for folate. But 83% likely good. So you want to keep that dialed up. If you have somebody that has variance there, I have one in both of them. That's only about 48% activity. Or someone, even if you have 2 normals on the 1298C, that's 677T. If you're an AA with both variants there, 25% MTHFR activity, hugely impactful. And I have someone I'm dealing with that right now, working actually with her doctors, because she was put on a detox protocol. She didn't know any of this stuff. Put her on a massive detox protocol for candida, parasites, all this. She like broke down, went to the ER. I'm going, there has to be something. I think it was too much. I want to see if it's coming from, could it be a genetic predisposition? to just not being dialed up there, and 100% in several different pathways, some of which you experience here as well. So really important things around the detox panel, which is my toxicants and inflammation. And that's where you'll see methylation, along with like glutathione, our master antioxidant responsible for reducing inflammation, detoxification, hugely important. A lot of people are genetically set up for reduced levels, not being able to maintain. And for that, glutathione, I don't tolerate oral glutathione. It makes me very agitated because the precursor, which I love for just about anybody, the precursor to glutathione is NAC, N-acetylcysteine. Thione, you need liposomal, or there's a brand called Glutaril, which I'm trying right now, and it's a topical, it's a spray, but it's still $120 a month.
Wow.
That's not, I mean, the one thing I'm really cautious of with my people, like you pay me to do a good job for you. I don't try to give everybody the most important, like the most expensive supplements and try to throw them on everything. There's some people out there doing DNA that they have their own supplement line and they send reports and they're like, you need this and this and this. I don't do that. I try to help you get rid of your supplement graveyard of all the crap that is like, why are you taking this? I don't know. I heard it was good. Do you need it? Let's save you some money, get you doing the right things and make sure you're taking them the right way. So NAC is in my dispensary under $15 a bottle for like a 2 to 3 months supply. It'll bump up those glutathione levels really well. It's better absorbed than glutathione unless you have it in those expensive ways like the liposomal or that spray like the Glutaril. And I like the Glutaril, but affordability wise, that's the $15 a bottle. Hey, I'm good with that. I take 1 or 2 each day. It's wonderful for the lungs. So that's, I'm not big on like everybody needs this supplement. That one I think is just a really fabulous antioxidant that plays a big part. Selenium is another one. Selenium you have to be careful supplementing with because you can get too much. You don't want to be over like 400 micrograms daily. It can cause issues. So the easiest way to get selenium, I always look at what can we get out of food first? 2 Brazil nuts a day. The nice big ones, go buy them in bulk, put them in a Ziploc, stick them in the freezer. Pull 2 out with breakfast every day. There's your selenium.
There you go.
B6, some of your SNPs require more B6. Foods with B6, chickpeas, what are some other ones? Fish, your proteins, chicken, beef, pork, starchy potatoes, pistachios are food forms of B6 that are helpful. Vitamin C is huge. Such a powerful antioxidant. The ascorbic acid, you're going to pee most of that out. I'll look for liposomal vitamin C, or I prefer the whole food form. It's called Camu, CAMU, in a capsule form with no other additives. It's a fruit that is the highest level of vitamin C, and I take 2 of those capsules a day. I don't eat as much fruit due to, I do eat berries every single day, sometimes some citrus, but like around my DNA, I have to watch with histamine. Citrus fruits are higher histamine. And then the insulin resistance, you and I both PCOS sisters. So you have to watch the higher glycemic foods. So I go more for the veggies, which also good vitamin C, peppers, your colored peppers, things like that, and some greens. And then we want to look at, quercetin can be very helpful. If you have seasonal allergies, it's wonderful natural antihistamine, anti-inflammatory. Choline plays a massive part. You didn't come up with a huge need for choline. You were neutral. And that's a big one with liver. There's very high impact genes called PEMT genes. You were normal in both of those. So that's great. When you have variants there, it's increased risk for liver dysfunction. EMT-TT genotype, 30% increased risk for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So we want to take care of the liver. So again, and with the detox system, all this crap goes through the liver. NAC, managing stress. We're never going to get rid of stress. Stress is anything that creates a reaction in the body. Us talking, look how we move. We're reacting, right? We're thinking, we're reacting. It's a good stress. Exercise, a good stress on the body. And I'll touch on that in a minute because it can be too much of a stress on the body. We have good stress, which is called eustress, EUSTRESS. And then we have the bad stress. And that's what we think of. Work, the kids, my relationship, physical. That is your physiological stress if you have thyroid issues. It's like anything creating imbalance is a stress on the body. So we're never going to get rid of it. It's all, how do we deal with it? So like the right exercise at the right times. So I want to put that in there the right way there. Your food, a good antioxidant diet. Fruits and veggies, people, please don't discount these. Do not be afraid. Get off the carb fear train. And sleep. People aren't sleeping, me included. The cycles. If I wasn't dialed in, doing everything I do, I would be like one of the Walking Dead. It's just due to this chronic back issue. And you have people super stressed, their cortisol's high, they're not sleeping, and then they're like doing constant exercise, eating crap, which again increases inflammation in the body. Like it just becomes this cycle. So the stress management is a key. And then the contact with the toxins in the environment. We have toxins in our food. We have toxins in the air. We have toxins like the plastic, so much plastic, BPA, phthalates, hair colors, makeup. This is
Yeah.
a shocker that I tell people. And then I finally saw David Wolf, natural guy on Facebook. He posted it yesterday. What about lead in lipstick? I was like, hallelujah, somebody else knows.
Yeah.
And I was a lip fiend. Now I don't only wear it minimally now. Like I think it's 75% of lipsticks contain lead. Get off the fluoride toothpaste.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it's Utah just outlawed fluoride in their water. The toxins that are affecting hormone levels, affecting thyroid,
Really?
testosterone's been tanking for guys for decades now. Women are all over the place, So minimize your toxins as much as you can. Cookware, get rid of the nonstick. Elizabeth Bolus is a great one to follow. She's the Toxin Insider. She did my podcast. I think it was like number 10 or something. I don't remember. It's back there. But it was like a 2-hour podcast. She touched on everything from makeup to even, all these states that legalized all the weed, one of the most pesticide ridden crops. So do your best to do organic. You can get online and look up it changes by year when they test. So look up clean 15 and dirty dozen list.
The pesticides are really impactful on hormones.
Hugely.
And, for those of us who are women going through the transition of perimenopause and into menopause, our hormones are going to be a mess. And for me personally, like going back a year and a half ago, I started having a lot of really crazy symptoms with perimenopause, and I'm now taking bioidentical hormones. But an important snip that I want to talk about has to do with detoxification of those hormones, because you can be on bioidentical hormones and then not process them properly and then have a risk of developing some issues from that. So you want to touch on that?
Yeah, specifically the estrogen metabolites that are toxic, that are floating around there, that can put you at an increased risk for breast cancer if you don't rid of them. I think I know what genes you're talking about, but I'm actually going to go back to COMT. The GG, you're good. It's that A allele, and I'm an AA. Again, you think of that very slow breakdown. It's a very slow breakdown of the estrogen metabolites. So it puts me at that increased risk, along with a couple of other genetic SNPs as well. GSTM1 is another one. If you're an AA, they call that the deletion. And that one is, again, it's a slower breakdown.
And I think I'm missing that one.
Well, that's what it's called, missing. You're an AA.
Okay.
Yeah, you're an AA. It's what it'll say, deletion or missing. And that's what that is. So it is impaired ability there. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at your section, I think you were decreased elimination, like slow elimination. So there's a couple things you can look at there. Again, you want to maintain healthy weight. You want to have a healthy diet. According to what is healthy for you. Sleep, the stress, regular exercise, huge components. So these are all factors. If you want to look at supplements, and I also say, like, you can look at your lab values, but typical lab values aren't going to show where those metabolites are going. What route are they being processed down, in the healthy or the more toxic? So a Dutch test, if you're questioning if you are high risk, like I did the Dutch test to make sure that I was doing things right. Saw some things I didn't want to see as much there. So I do a combination, especially when you're this much. And I put clients on this too. And I always say, just run it by your doc if you're doing the hormones. Is DIM, which is from cruciferous vegetables. And we know too many cruciferous, like high consumption, which most of us are or were of cruciferous, can potentially lower levels of iodine, and that can affect thyroid. So
Right.
like every vegetable I ate before I found pH360 on a daily basis, like multiple times a day, were all cruciferous. Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage. Like I would have cabbage soup, Brussels sprouts, broccoli stir fry. And this was like all day, every day. So we don't think about how too much of a good thing can be too much.
Exactly.
DIM is a component that comes off of cruciferous veggies. So DIM will help to bind to those toxic estrogen metabolites. And then there's a supplement called calcium D-glucarate. And that's like, let's get this crap out of here. So I do both.
Me too.
I have my friend in Florida, she fought me for like a year. And she finally said, well, what's this stuff? And I said, go DIM, try the DIM. And she said, oh my God, that alone helped me release extra weight because
Was
estrogen
getting
dominance.
puffy everywhere. I was
Puffy.
puffy and I was like, why am I so puffy? And I started taking those, and within a week I felt like I didn't lose any weight on the scale, but like I looked
It's the
so
puff.
much slimmer. The puff
Yep.
was gone. I was noticing in the way my clothes were fitting. So yeah, big
It's
change.
all that estrogen dominance weight gain that happens for people that are like this. It was the same with me when I went on the estradiol patch. At the 0.5 milligrams, 9 pounds in 2 weeks. Like
Man.
I ballooned. I couldn't fit. I had a breast reduction. I couldn't get in my bra. I was like, what the
Wow.
hell? I mean, everything. And then, like you said, your face, like it's not like these are jowls. It's not the jowls. It becomes round. It's like
Mhm.
puff,
I
puff
was
the magic
puffy,
dragon. And
puffy
then
face. Yeah.
it's not the upper abdomen, it's lower. And it's the lower abdomen, but it's around the butt and the upper thighs is the big part. It, like you said, like everything changes. So it can be super helpful if you're experiencing this because I need that estrogen or that estradiol. Like I need that. My
Yes.
body is not good without it. My skin
Me
turns
neither.
crepe, right? You feel it sweating. Like, yeah, it's miserable. And you're going, but I don't want to be a bloated Michelin man. I don't want to fit in my pants. So this is a way to make sure that you're ridding of that and not, and you can look in labs and see, I've had people that estrogen dominant they become. So I dropped the patch in half, went on, and that didn't help, but it did with the DIM. So now I stay at that lower level. So really important when you understand how this stuff works. But one other thing that I just thought of was around the toxins. Like there's actually genetic SNPs that phthalate phthalate, PHTHALATE. Blah, I can spell it better than I can say it. That exposure for these people with these SNPs can increase risk with insulin resistance, PCOS. There's big drivers of PCOS. If we go back to that hormone panel again, one more time with the sex hormones, the PCOS can also be driven by increased conversion of progesterone to androstenedione, which is androgenic. And we
Wow.
are typically more androgenic, have higher levels of that with PCOS. So I see that come up, and I just had somebody last week, I did hers, and she's like, oh my God, 100%. But yeah, so those toxins can affect different things like that. One that comes up under I think it was the GSTM, the GSTM1 again, with the AA. And I see it also in, which one was it? The GSTP1. Off top of my head, I can't remember. Those three just kind of run all together for me, but increased risk for liver issues with aflatoxin B1. It's a type of mold, I believe. But where is it predominantly present? In big amounts? Peanuts. So, and people say, I mean, I used to sit at a ball game and go through a bag of peanuts, like, because they're so good. Increased issues with histamine. But if you have mold issues or anything like that, so we see even different foods around. The toxins is a big one.
That was phenomenal. Now let's move into the ones that I think everyone is wanting to hear about, the thyroid ones.
So the two that we look at thyroid, the first one we're going to do is the D1. D101 is responsible for what everybody knows here with thyroid, converting the T4 to T3. T4 inactive to T3 active so that we can utilize it. And this is conversion that you see lab results with, right? Looking at your T4, T3 numbers, reverse T3. And this is predominantly done in the liver. Everybody's going to think thyroid, but it's actually the liver, and kidneys are predominantly where this conversion takes place. And then you can have with two, homozygous, meaning two of the same, like two normals in both of those D101s we're looking at, you might be, I'm going to call it double normal to make things easy. And that's Jen. And that she's a C6, that's normal. That is likely increased conversion. So a very good conversion of T4 to T3, Jen's hypothyroid.
Yep.
So
That's not how it's expressing right now.
it's not expressing. So I think it's really good to bring up expression here. She's more likely genetically set up to be hyperthyroid, but there's the opposite. So what's happening there, or what do we think could happen there? There's other things that also affect conversion, not just genetics. One
Right.
big one is stress. You and I both experienced that.
Yeah.
Liver issues due to where a lot of that conversion takes place. So we want to make sure the liver is getting some love if you're having low conversion. Again, phosphatidylcholine is one. Phosphatidylcholine is fabulous, and that's a great one for the liver. So that one's nice. Selenium deficiency, eat those Brazil nuts. Make sure you have good adequate selenium. Stress, again, certain medications, especially heart ones. What was one called? Amiodarone. Amiodarone?
Yeah, that's a
I wrote it down so I remember.
iodine drug.
Yeah, anti-arrhythmic compounds that can affect thyroid conversion. So there's, different things that I still think, like, again, food around the gut, that's going to play a part. So just because, like, now Jen is both normals, so she's increased. I, on the other hand, as an example, am both variants. So I'm homozygous variants in both of those. I have very low conversion. When I was doing T4, or even like Nature Throid when it was out, the combo, the desiccated, where it was T4 and T3, and I was just getting more tired and more tired, and I was losing more hair. And my functional medicine person said, take more. Well, let's up your dose. And I kept feeling worse. And then pulled out my DNA, and I was like, holy crap, I have both variants here. I think I might just be T3 only, because my reverse T3 was always high. And I was always told it's just stress. Even in times where I was like, had a chill life. And nobody ever addressed what else this could be, like poor conversion. So now I'm like 42 micrograms twice a day, T3 only. I'm happy. My hair is growing back. And the interesting thing, when I took that information, I was all excited, ran right down to my practitioner, and I was like, look at this. This explains it. She's like, I'm not giving you T3. And that was a functional medicine nurse practitioner. So be your own best medical advocate.
The D101 for me was normal.
Yep, my bad.
D102, I have a SNP. And I thought this was so cool because I fully expected to have the D101 SNP because of what I deal with. I have low T.
Yeah, we were shocked. It was like increased.
Completely shocked when it said I had an increased conversion propensity, because I'm not. Actually, just like you said about yourself, I've always struggled with that high reverse T3, and I have low T3. So the D102 SNP has to do with the brain.
Conversion. It's conversion only in the brain, and it's not detectable through labs.
And so that's why it's so crucial that this is a clarion call to all of you who are watching this, who are fatigued, cold all the time, having issues with weight gain. If you feel like you're hypothyroid, but it's not showing up on labs, this is a reason you might want to consider looking into your DNA. Because I can think back all the way to 2018, 2017, when I would have been 100% convinced that I had hypothyroidism, but I came back with labs that were totally normal. In fact, they were actually pretty optimal that time, and better than they are now. ever so slightly every year they would get a little bit lower and a little bit lower and a little bit lower. And it took until 2024 for my T3 value to dip out of range. That's a long time to struggle with fatigue and weight gain and brain fog and hair loss. And let me just tell you, I've been on thyroid medicine for a year, a very tiny dose, because I don't have a huge degree of hypothyroidism, but just that tiny little dose of thyroid medicine has made huge difference in my hair. I have grown back so much hair.
Plus, with that conversion, you wouldn't need much. And I would tell a doc, like, I don't need much. if I'm hypo, I just need a little bit, because you're going to be at more risk of going hyper with an increased conversion.
So I take 15 micrograms of T3 a day. That's spaced out, in 3 different doses. And then another thing you mentioned to me that was helpful with my D102 SNP is ashwagandha.
Ashwagandha. Yep.
I'm taking that every day.
Yeah.
And then, of course, all the lifestyle things that are, critical to helping that gene to not express. And so if you're struggling with the fatigue and your doctor's not listening to you, you may want to consider working with Susan. This particular SNP affects about 40% of people who have a European ancestry. It affects more of an African ancestry. And it's going to cause this brain fog, this fatigue, this lower sense of well-being.
Yeah, feelings of lesser well-being, just off, and
Yeah.
you can't explain it. It's different from your dopamine flatline. I think that's important to point out, because we talked about when you felt like my dopamine was just tanked. It's like no motivation. This is different. It's just a feeling of lesser well-being that you can't shake. I also have variants here. I'm homozygous, both. And there's times I definitely feel this.
And when you start
I love
taking
ashwagandha,
the right medication for that and the right supplements, and you feel that shift, it's like, now I see it's completely different. I feel so much different. And so I'm really grateful to know that.
Before we close out on the DNA, there's just a couple others I want to touch on that are just super important, because they're so lifestyle driven. And when you're looking at PCOS, you've got insulin resistance, increased risk. Huge. There's a big driver there with the hormones. Is the ApoE genes, ApoE. Those are your Alzheimer's, cardiovascular, but your major Alzheimer's risk genes there. If you are a 3-3, you are not increased risk. So we want to keep it that way. So fish oil is a huge one. Good intake of omega-3s. Another reason to exercise, regular exercise, to keep those genes expressing. Don't smoke.
No.
Right. And you always want to keep your foods, again, on the lower glycemic index, which I'm not too worried about with your profile. If you're someone that has a 4 in there, an ApoE 2-4, 3-4, 4-4 is the highest risk. 3-4 is next highest, and I'm a 3-4. Where the 3-3, they say moderate alcohol shouldn't affect it. 3-4, a 4-4, a 2-4, alcohol is absolutely not recommended. So when I found out in 2019, just cold turkey. I haven't touched anything since. I want my brain about me.
Yes.
Low glycemic index, eating, hugely important. Saturated fats are an enemy. So when we understand these, we can see, because my lifestyle before, when I was more of a keto, eating fat bombs and, having a nice glass of wine here or there, I had no idea I'm increasing my risk for potential for early onset Alzheimer's, cognitive impairment. Do I want that? No, I had a parent that dealt with that. The other thing we touched on here briefly, but I think is such a huge component because it affects autoimmune. The root of disease is in inflammation. And there's 2 high impact genetic SNPs, and you had variants in, I think, both of them. They're TNF, which is tumor necrosis factor, and TNF alpha is the inflammation there, and then IL-6, interleukin 6. They're major inflammatory cytokines. And you were hearing a lot of that around the COVID when that was at, like, inflammatory cytokines can lead to disease, right? If they're too high. They're like IL-6 released during exercise, protective, can be great. But did you know that with more than 2 hours exercise daily, that actually increases 6 to where it's inflammatory? So more isn't always better in exercise. I said I would come back to that before. So something like that, hugely important. Other things that raise, like TNF alpha and IL-6, poor sleep or sleep deprivation. Dial it in. If you don't know how, hit me up. Oxidative stress. Your activators, crusaders, connectors, more prone to oxidative stress. Antioxidants food. Let's see. Selenium deficiency. There again, you see all these kind of, like, everything plays here to either make it a really fun playground or, oh my God, I got to get off of this playground. It's terrible. Stress is a major factor in both. High fat diet, high sugar. You see, like, the things that, like, and here, I'm going to tell you this with the TNF alpha, because again, you're hearing, like, you just need protein and high fat. Low fruit and vegetable intake can increase TNF alpha.
What?
Not getting enough of your fruits and veggies.
I
Sunshine.
did it myself. Yeah.
If you sitting outside and you're like, God, the sun drained me, it increases TNF alpha. So just know that, like, I lay on my paddleboard, I'll go paddle and I'll lay out there for 5 hours. Then I come back and I'm like, I didn't do anything and it wiped me out. Or I could go hike and I'll be out in it, but I'm active, doesn't wipe me out as much. But just laying there in the sun, that's why we can be drained. Not such a bad thing because we're not doing that all the time, right? But these are just things, again, high fat diet, low zinc, choline deficiency, magnesium deficiencies. Test and see where you are. Dial your lifestyle in. That's why this is also impactful, because inflammation is the root of disease and disease. And that includes Hashimoto's or thyroid disease, anything like that. That's all. I think we covered like some of the more impactful. We didn't really talk about the saturated fats that are undesirable for you. There's several of those SNPs, like a keto diet for you or a carnivore, just not ideal. You just don't have a good ability to process saturated fats well, and that can lead to increases in cholesterol, triglycerides. Even I think you had yep, TC, increased risk type 2 diabetes with saturated fat increased intake. Everybody thinks it's just like the cholesterol and all, but no, the saturated fats can play a huge part in glucose and
Yeah.
insulin resistance as well. It's a complex system. This is what I say. It's a complex system. You can go buy someone's kit for, I'll tell you the 5 SNPs around methylation, tell you everything that's wrong with you. I call BS on it. You see how many we just talked about, and that's from panels. That's from 4 different panels of DNA and thousands of SNPs that have been looked at there. And when you put them all together, so many of them, and you'll see some that'll say like, this one is impactful if it's combined with this.
Right.
So you can't just look at one thing. It's not all about methylation. Methylation plays a crucial part. But when you look like it, say yours is likely normal, look at everything else. You would just look at those and go, I'm fine then.
Yeah.
But you're not. There's other things going on that are hugely impactful.
All of this information has shed so much light on my family history, the symptoms that I've experienced, and why certain lifestyle choices haven't worked for me in the past. The low dopamine, the low motivation, my risk of diabetes, which I've struggled in the past with. I had pre-diabetes as a 20-something. Was on metformin even for a period of time. I've always struggled with my weight. I've always had issues with my hormones. And now as a 42-year-old, I'm on bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. So having all of these insights, combining with my lab results, now, the hypothyroidism even, this is just so impactful and so insightful. So tell the viewers who might be in the same situation, who are thinking, I really want to get all of this dialed in and I don't know where to start. Tell the viewers how they can work with you and your program that you're offering now.
Yeah. So I do one-on-ones. And I can do, we've talked about the PH 360, the user manual. I now can do that on its own. Ideally, of course, if you want all the information, your user manual and your blueprint, you do the 2 together. So that's an option. Or I can do DNA if you're just like interested in the DNA. I don't coach off of DNA. I don't do coaching sessions because, as you see, it's not precision as much. It's information that we have. But if someone's looking for, I want precision recommendations, tell me exactly what I need to eat, when I should eat, what type of workouts are ideal for me. Am I busting my ass at CrossFit and I'm supposed to be doing yoga? Like, what's the deal? That's going to be PH 360, So I like to have a consult, find out what is it you're actually looking for. What do you want to achieve? What are your goals? What kind of information do you want? Do you want coaching? Do you want the one and done DNA? And we really just find out, I don't try to just say, here's what I do. I really want to get to know the person and find out what they're looking to accomplish and then recommend. And then, if it's a fit, great. If it's not, that's fine too. But it's worth having a conversation if you're in a place that you're not feeling right. That's my one-on-ones. Now we're doing something, and it's actually going to be having a webinar on the 14th. It should be 6:00 Eastern time. And if you go to my, let's see, Instagram is Susan Robbins _ Epigenetic coach. You can find me on Facebook under my name or Healthy Awakening. Epigenetic coaching is my business page. You can find me either way. I'm happy to friend you, follow me. But I will be promoting on there. It's another coach, another PH 360 coach. And we are going to be doing our first, and this is going to be like nobody else doing this in the United States, a personalized group introduction to personalized health program. And it's going to be called the Epigenetic Edge. And we're going to be talking about that in the webinar, like fill you in on what it is. And we're going to have, so if you can show up, great. Like I said, I'll have all the information promoting it where you can sign up for the webinar, and we'll even have a live Q&A and answer any questions you have. We'll explain the program and everything. The DNA will not come with that program, but it will be an optional add-on. Typically, every group program that you're going to go into, you're a number, and it is a one-size-fits-all protocol. So everybody doing this hormone program is going to do this. Everybody in this exercise program is going to do this. Everybody in this mindset program is going to do this. And ours combines all of it in more of a like an introduction way where you will actually get your own pH 360. It's in a group setting, so you'll get great support, live calls. Well, like I said, we'll go over the details. I don't want to give too much away because we're too excited. And we're working like crazy on this to just put out a fantastic program so that we can make personalized health accessible to everybody, because it's the one thing. My 70-year-old woman, she's done one session with me and she has tried everything. And I mean, thousands of dollars with high name experts that would blow your mind. And I met her and she said, I feel like this is my missing piece. We didn't even start the coaching. She just got her profile, started playing around with some timing and recipes, and was already down 4 pounds by the time we met. For our first session last week, I was like, holy crap, Carol. So like, it's amazing what a difference people seeing you, and no matter how many people in the group, you will be seen as an individual. Your recommendations will all be personal. It's just in a group setting. So I'm really excited to be able to offer that, to be able to help more people out there. And so there's all kinds of options. Just reach out to me. Like I said, I'm happy to have a Zoom call, a phone chat, email chat, however you want to do it. My website is healthyawakening.co, and it's one awakening. There's no S at the end. And so you can hit me up there. You can email me through there. My phone number is I might be on there as well. You can reach me through Facebook, Instagram, ask questions about this podcast. I'm very accessible. I've been where probably most of you are. I've been where Jen is. I'm going through stuff myself right now with stress that's affecting my thyroid and my insulin. And the only reason I'm like able to be like this is because I'm dialed in. And it just makes all the difference in the world when you're doing the things that you're designed to do. And so we're just trying to make everybody healthy in 2025 and beyond, and create that ripple effect, because people seeing you get healthier might spur somebody else that was out of hope at the time to take the reins. Because if it's anything we've seen over these last 5 years now, is you have to be your best medical advocate. It's not the doctors. It's not the nurse practitioners, even coaches. Like, my goal is to teach you how to be self-sufficient and know your body better. I will know how you work better than you will if you start working with me, until you start like, wow, this is who I am authentically. I had no idea. Just, being able to understand who you are and live it authentically and own it. It's pretty amazing as you've seen with your changes, because you're so much better than you were when we started. I mean,
Yeah.
Jen was like this, like it just.
I will just say, like, to all of you
Fog.
watching this, I was seriously thinking about hanging it up and just being like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. It's too much. It's taking a toll on my health. It's affecting me. It's not just how I feel. It's like, I can't be a good wife. I can't be a good mom, and my family is important. It's the most important thing to me. So, feeling better and being better for them, and then being able to like regain my passion for this has been so amazing. Like I had lost all desire to do all of this, and I love it. It's life-giving to me, helping people take the reins on their own health. It's vitally important. And when you take control of your own health and you preserve your quality of life and improve your quality of life, it's like you said, it's a ripple effect. It goes out and you never know who it's going to impact. I can't thank you enough for sharing all your insights today. And everyone stay tuned, because I'm going to be on Susan's podcast next. So if you want to keep listening to our conversations, tune in to her podcast.
I will just a quickie here with the podcast. I've been doing it myself. Yesterday was my 1-year anniversary of my podcast. It's called Everyday Epigenetics, Raw, Real, Relatable. It's not your deep dive science. It's your applicable to the layman, to understand everything lifestyle and environment, how it relates to our genetic expression. But I've been doing it by myself, and I have had a guest on there named Kate King. I've had her on 3 times. Last year, she was top 2 of my 5 top podcasts. She was in the top 5 both times she was on. Like, she's a licensed therapist. She is all about trauma and epigenetics, so just how our behavior affects not only our genetics, but our children, generations down the road. She's fantastic. And after our 3rd one, she lives close to me. We got together and met. I wish you lived closer because I'd be like, Jen, I'm coming over. And we decided that she's going to come on as my co-host starting June 1st.
Very exciting.
That'll be really good. Also, just more that you can dive into listening about all things genetic and how what you're doing now, including you, is affecting your children and their genetics and their children down the road. I just wanted to bring that up because I think that's such an important point that, even if you have this family history, as you've said, like I look at my family history.
Yeah.
Even if you have that, I have a terrible family history. The buck can stop here. You don't have to continue it. When you take that control and you start with your expression, think about your kids with their expression. Like, what are you feeding them? Do you have them in front of the computer all day? To get outside and play and move. All of these things are impactful. So again, it's never too late to dive in and it's never too soon to dive in. So for all your listeners, kudos to you for trying to make changes because it's not just affecting you.
That wraps up today's episode. If you found this valuable, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit. You can find links to everything we discussed in the show notes below and on my Substack, It's Me, Jen Again. Find a physician, discover treatment options, and join our patient community at saveyourthyroid.org. Please remember this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. No endorsement is given or implied for any specific product, treatment, or physician mentioned. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional for your individual needs. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.